All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Sitara Podcast. My name is Caleb Lara, and to my right is Prophet Avi Nash. He is the monarch to Sitara Podcast and Sitara Grotto. Today, we will be talking about
Enlightenment.
enlightenment.
And do you really want enlightenment?
And do we really want it? What's your take on it?
So, you know me, I always go a roundabout way of saying things. So, first off, a lot of people in this world claim to be enlightened,
Yeah.
but they don't know the truth behind enlightenment. They know about it, but they don't actually live by it, I guess that's so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty often we see gurus. We're in an era where everybody is a self-proclaimed guru, and everybody wants a guru. And I think enlightenment is one of those things that shows and is transcendent beyond you putting on some robe or an act.
Yeah, it's individuals whose chakra is not aligned.
Yeah, to say the least. It seems like the trend is to pretend to have an ego death, put on a fancy robe,
Right.
and proclaim yourself to be enlightenment or to have enlightenment. And in reality, what's happening is that instead of an ego death, you're inflating your ego, and we find this pretty dangerous a lot of times because these people go out there and try to, get followers and
Right.
and try to proclaim some sort of truth, and that's when they went wrong.
Yeah.
All we know is that we know nothing at all. It's just the
Yeah,
famous saying.
Yeah, it's just proven fact that as much as we know, it's very minuscule compared to what's truly out there.
Yeah, especially when it comes to a dimension that's abstract, uh, esoteric by the pure definition of the word. It's one of those things where, it it's a combination of things. You have to become who you really are, or and you have to think for yourself, and at the same time you have to also have that realization of the truest self. In this, there has to be a balance with reality and with staying in touch with everyday life. Where do you think people go wrong on this?
A lot of people go wrong in trying to balance things in the wrong aspect. You know, people, they want the positivity, but in order to have the positivity, you have to go through something bad or go through something negative, vice versa. I think that along with light, there's darkness, and you can't reach the light until you go through darkness.
Without a doubt.
And it's all a balancing act of which road are you taking and how did you get there.
Yeah, that darkness, that chaos, I think it's essential to our existence and to reaching any kind of enlightenment. And when you go through that chaos, you come back and you understand that enlightenment is actually really rough.
Right.
There is no peace, or no total peace. There is a lot of introspect and dealing with emotions that have been avoided. You're dealing with thoughts and shadows, and when you go and try to pretend to have enlightenment and crumble under emotions or
Right.
a little bit of chaos, you've demonstrated that you haven't gone through your own chaos, your own darkness.
Right. right? And going through enlightenment, you can't go through it alone,
Yeah.
because in that enlightenment, going through it alone, you're going to reach your, I guess what they call dark spots, such as the loneliness, the aspect of you're trying to do something, you don't know how to do it or which way to do it. You have to have some type of guidance in order to go through enlightenment.
Yeah, without a doubt, it is rough. So, guidance. We have Kant talking about think for yourself,
Right.
and we have Buddha talking about relinquish yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have those that believe in realizing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All of these are valid. Do you believe these to be the complete truth of enlightenment?
All of them are valid, and all of them lead down the same road. It's just the different aspects or different ways that you may get down that road. Some people take the high road, some people take the low road, some people take the long road, or the fast road. But in essence, they're following one of those three aspects to get to the end of the road.
Well, what's interesting to me would be taking an approach that to me is very Masonic. It's not about a final destination, and it's not about a permanent state of mind or permanent state of being,
Mm-hmm.
but being able to understand that those three are always active. These are all tools that you use. And enlightenment is something that you could reach at a moment, at an instant,
Right.
and not necessarily that you stay there. Um, Perhaps I'm wrong. However, it seems that if you are enlightenment, when you come back to try to interact with the world, everything is going to seem vain. Everything is going to have no point to it, no purpose. You're going to have a complete disconnect and disassociation with society. And then it's counterproductive.
So enlightenment can have different stages in your life.
Mhm.
You don't become enlightened about everything at once, because if you did, that'd be an overload. So with the different stages of enlightenment, um, let's just say, I always correlate things. You're a chef, and you master the aspect of mixing and cooking, and all the aspects of being a chef. You've reached that high point to where you're the best, and everybody underneath you is just mediocre. You get bored with that aspect, but then you may have mastered the grill, but what about baking?
Yeah.
You're not so good at baking, so now that enlightenment moves to a different stage. Now you have to master baking. The same aspect we can apply to life and enlightenment in life, because you may be the best version of yourself, but in the time that you are in.
Yeah.
Because 5 years from now, things change and you have to reach new peaks in order to be more enlightened. So enlightenment, I don't believe that you can ever reach full enlightenment of everything.
So yeah, I mean that what you just explained and what we've been alluding to is a very practical way of approaching it. The idea here would be that there is that those Buddha figures and
Right.
Jesus figures and all of that where they seem to have gotten to where they were enlightened about everything. Is that possible for us? Are they showing us the way, or were they unique to their own?
They are unique to their own by showing us the way,
Mm.
because how would we know how to master any art in any form if we don't have a guru, a leader, or some type of specialist.
So then at the end of the day, we have two enlightenments, the practical one that we approach with little bits at a time, hoping to at some point get to where we get an ultimate enlightenment.
Right.
So then an ultimate enlightenment is possible for us. Would this be the same as apotheosis?
I guess theoretically it would be the same, you know. I believe that if we do reach the ultimate enlightenment, some say that you reach death, because death is the debt that man pays.
So are we talking about a physical death or the death of your ego, and you no longer, that is why you no longer identify with society?
It can actually be in both aspects.
I suppose it would be an ego for sure, and most of them do end up dead, right?
Yeah.
So the idea here would be to figure out a way to progressively approach enlightenment in a way that keeps us being functionable beings.
Yeah, and I think that's that, taking it at different steps and different stages. Because if you lock yourself in a room and you try to be enlightened, there goes the scribbles on the wall, there goes the madness within, and in essence to the world, you turn crazy.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's the practical aspect. I believe there is many ways that we could reach this and perhaps have an experience that allows us to stay there. However, that madness is very much present right before you get there. Uh, in the occult world, they call that the dark night of the soul.
Okay.
And that determines whether you come out basically enlightened, or you come out crazy.
Right.
And we see evidence. Here's an interesting case, and let's go on a tangent. It is a podcast after all. Have you heard of Frater Akkad?
Yes.
Frater Akkad. So, for context, Frater Akkad was Aleister Crowley's #1 student, to the degree that Crowley, as big as his ego was, actually dared to say that he had found who would replace him. He went nuts and basically started the whole thing on Thelema. Talks about the bringing of some ages. He talked about how it was already here. That was their big fallout.
Mm-hmm.
However, the guy literally did go nuts. And eventually, years later, he himself talked about how there was a phase in his life when he really wasn't himself. This is in modern times. In more mythical, allegorical stories, the greatest magician, the greatest manifester, and the greatest enlightened human was Solomon,
Okay.
being the wisest of all. And we very clearly have a depiction of him also going crazy
Right.
and being out in the wilderness, which I believe is all an allegory to that dark night of the soul.
Gotcha.
So as Masons, a lot of times, and as those that try to seek the light, and we associate light to knowledge, but we have to understand that it will make us go a little nutty to society.
Right.
And that's what we need to conquer. And that's all of these individuals were able to come out of this. So this is where we have that aspect of the tree of life. And we have that middle pillar where ultimately we have Kether. And in pure Kabbalah, Jewish pure Kabbalah, you could never ever reach Kether. In Western Hermeticism, we want to do things all at once. So hell yeah, we're gonna get there. And so the occult talks about how right before that you have a hidden sphere, and this hidden sphere is where you passing through it to get together is where you go through the dark night of the soul.
Okay.
And this is also where you find the genius, the holy genius that orders like the Golden Dawn talk about it, or the holy guardian angel like the OTO, or some Christian mystics talk about this is the Holy Spirit, or New Age talks about the higher self. This is that Platonic divine spark we've mentioned before, that tether we have with the divine, where we come face to face with that aspect that is the purest that could guide us from that point on. And without that guidance, we go nuts.
Right, right. And I think because of the world that we live in and based upon societal standards is why we label individuals who are enlightened or who have reached that peak as crazy, because it's not the society norm.
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring that up. I think that would add another dimension to what enlightenment is. So we have a practical enlightenment where we digest knowledge and know-how, whether it's spiritual or intellectual, bits at a time. And then we have a mystical enlightenment where we get it all at once. But now we come to another definition of enlightenment where we all as an organism are being enlightenment as a humanity. And it only feels lonely because you come back and nobody knows what the hell you're talking about.
Right.
And so this is why actually we see those gurus and they cling on to the robes and they all of a sudden change their persona. It's a desperate cry to try to keep a tether to society. It's like, well, I'm enlightened and society identifies enlightened people as this stereotype, so that's the stereotype I'm going to be.
Yeah.
So under all that, a lot of times we find panic, and loneliness. And so we now understand that enlightenment is actually a communal thing.
Right.
And so in order for there to be a permanent enlightenment that doesn't get in the way or get us murdered, we have to be able to progress as a society. And so that comes to where we come into New Ages and talk about the eons and epochs of humanity. And it does seem like we have definitely had a shift. We're the same age. And I mean, the world doesn't feel like it did when we were kids.
No,
like
not at
80s,
all.
90s, it felt like it was a different reality.
It was probably the shift between 1999 to 2000.
Yeah, or 2012, or I mean, so one of them.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, the shift between that new age that, they've mentioned in so many orders, the age of Aquarius and the age of Horus and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of titles. We may perhaps already have started that, and that's the mayhem going on in the world.
So speaking of that, I was reading something the other day, and it was talking about how I think it was Webster's dictionary, how every so often they update it with new words, where they're taking out a bunch of words.
Wow.
So it's sort of kind of like over time how the meaning of words change.
Yeah.
So we are in that phase to where things are changing and phasing out.
Yeah.
And it's not like the old school cars fading out. This is like a fading out to where they're going to be null and not existent.
Yeah. It's pretty mind blowing. So I guess it comes down to that old axiom of having to adapt
Right.
or conserve, and
Right.
that balance between the two. And I mean, we have found that if you don't adapt, you die,
Right.
but if you don't conserve, you lose identity.
Right.
So it's a crisis that we as a society are going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And but there's nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing that we're going through now, maybe not in this much extremity or in the same type of technological aspect, is the same thing that they probably went through in the 40s,
26,000 years
you
ago.
know, even like the 40s and 50s,
Yeah.
because they had that shift. If you think about someone who's 100 years old, how many shifts within society have they gone
None more than our generation, bro.
through?
Gen X. Oh my God, bro. We went from no internet
Right.
to internet to.
Cell phones and now touchscreen phones.
I remember telling people, I used to sell cell phones, and when the text feature came out,
Yeah.
I remember telling people, nobody's gonna want to text. Who's gonna want to text?
Yeah.
And I remember looking at people with their cameras and saying, what do they do? Is that for social media?
Yeah.
Look at me now.
Yeah.
I mean, it is insane. I don't think any generation has seen so many rapid shifts.
Right. Because even if you look at our parents were, especially at our age, we're on the cusp of what our parents kind of went through, plus what this new generation went through. So even our parents have seen the same changes that we've seen.
Yeah. Well, here's an odd observation that is very personal. If you look at the 50s, you look at the 20s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, all those generations had very definite changes.
Right.
And when you went from one generation and looked back, it looked vintage.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I look at kids now and they look like the 90s.
I can see that. I can see
Yeah,
that.
there hasn't been that huge shift
Right.
from like one huge generation. I mean, we in the 90s look back at the 70s and that looked vintage.
Completely different.
And those were our parents.
Yeah.
But it was only 20 years before that.
Right.
The kids that are now 20 years old look like the kids in the 90s.
In the
Look what we did in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know, something happened. We didn't have that shift.
Yeah.
Maybe we're still asleep in that reality. They turned on the switch and real reality turned off, and now we're really in the virtual.
Yeah. I mean, you never know. The way that things are going now is like, is this really the sun in the sky?
Yeah. Oh my God! Did you see the sun dogs in China?
No.
You know what a sun dog is?
Yes.
Well, they saw 4, like 2 days ago.
Uh-huh.
That is mind blowing. I had only ever seen 2. So basically, a sun dog is the reflection of the sun that appears next to the sun. So it looks like there's 2 suns.
There's 2. Yeah.
In China, they saw 5 suns.
Yeah. So.
That's wild.
Yeah. You never know.
It's breaking the matrix.
Is everything a hologram?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting aspect. So let's get mystical again and get back on track. Holograms, if you break them up, they all hold the complete image, right?
Mhm.
That's what makes a hologram.
Right.
Are we holograms of God? I mean, it does say you were created in our image. And then the other question is, if all reality is just a mirror of our internal reality, because reality only happens within us,
Right.
then that hologram is just being projected from within us.
We're all plugged into the same game console.
Yeah, that's what I was leading to.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I was right when I was a kid and said that we were here for his entertainment. Bro, it
Yeah.
sounds harsh, but it's looking like it's true.
Yeah. We are made in the image, and we portray those who are made after.
Yeah.
It's sort of kind of like you have a cat, a dog, or whatever animal it is. That animal has, we call it animalistic instincts.
Uh-huh.
As humans, we have those too.
Right.
Animals, it's like, how does this kid know to use the litter box? How does this dog know how to do this, do that? We have those instincts ourselves as humans. And a lot of times we didn't learn them. As we grow up, we pop in our head,
Right. Well, that's Jung's collective unconscious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a very Sitara style, we started being very mystical and philosophical and turned into complete heretics. So, to put a cherry on top of that heresy, perhaps that is where man created the image of God from. That collective consciousness, that primal archetypal image.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, man created God.
Yeah. And that would probably be why there are so many different gods. Because everybody thinks differently and has a different perception of things in life.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, if God should happen to be playing a game, there needs to be some sort of adversity, controversy, some polemic and drama in order for the game to be good.
Right.
And so God experiences himself through us in very many different flavors.
Oh yeah. I could not disagree.
I think we just lost our 3 Christian subscribers. All right, senor. Well, where do we go from here?
The next aspect.
We had an outline at some point before the tangent. Light and darkness.
Okay, so light and darkness. You have to have light in order to have darkness. You have to have darkness in order to have light. That's sort of kind of like can't have good without bad, bad without good. So are we going through darkness to reach the light, or are we in the light to go to darkness?
So does light reveal the shape of darkness? We are going through darkness to get to light. I think that at the end of the day, we have to evaluate what light is. Mm-hmm. And beyond it being knowledge, I think it is also the life source that we are. And so if I was to sound new agey, we are light beings going through life.
Okay, so what if we were dark beings?
You are.
And we were in the cave.
Yeah.
Is the cave and our mentality in the cave what is helping us survive? Or if we're that one that escapes from the cave, and so if you put it either way, the one who escapes from the cave, he reached enlightenment, comes back, tries to tell the others. But, to them, he's the ignorant fool. He's the crazy person. But in the darkness, they reached enlightenment themselves because technically, I guess now we would say they're the crazies because they're talking to shadows.
Yeah, well, you're talking the whole simulacra type of thing, right? Where the enlightenment they've reached is only based on what they could assume from the shadows. So it's
Right.
only a simulation of the actual enlightenment. So at some point, it's not so much the wisdom, but the attributes of it, and that's like the simulacra. So it's not so much that you want a Ferrari, it's that you want to take an Instagram picture with a Ferrari. So it's no longer, no more even, it's not even just not the simulation, but it's the simulacra.
Right.
So that's where those are. And in regards to being a dark being or a light being, I'm not quite sure what the definition of that is. But the scenario itself applies to anyone in the cave. You're going to see shadows. You're going to reach determinations, and when you make those determinations, you're gonna think you have a fact.
Right.
And then the end of the day, all of that was all created within you with that limited understanding. And so again, it's it's what that person wants. So if that person, again, if you want the Ferrari, not because the Ferrari, but
Mm-hmm.
because the picture on Instagram with the Ferrari, now you're caught up in the simulacra. So if the person wanted to be the wise of the cave, then they would come up with a lot of fancy solutions as opposed to the one that wanted to be entertaining. You know, everybody would come up with their own simulacra. All of them would be right. None of them would be the one that has the truth.
Valid point. Valid point. So, if the one never left the cave, though, they would never know the truth.
That's interesting. So that's where those beings come in, right? So if we don't have a guru and we don't have somebody come and telling us from the outside, we find the truth within. And so ultimately, the simulation breaks down. Ultimately, the simulacra is no longer fulfilling. And so you start to have introspect and you find that tether. And so even without breaking out, there's still a way to have some sort of enlightenment.
Right. Okay. I can see that. I can see that.
The idea here is that all these figures that did that left a way for us to do it ourselves.
Ourselves. Yeah. I guess we call that free will.
Oh. Okay, so free will. Is it really free? uh, no, I don't know if we call that free will. We call that a really good example. And whether we have free will or not, I'm not sure. So typically, those that are, so as Masons, we believe in free will. However, there does seem to be an ultimate point to the game, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if it is a reality that somebody's playing and so on, there's stages, there's ultimately a path already set out.
Right.
So is it free will or freedom of choice? Because the final destination seems to be set. It may sway depending on our answers, but it seems to already be pre-programmed.
Right. So technically, free will and free choice. I think it's more so free choice
I think
because
so too.
it's you're you're doing what you want to do, but at the same time, you have to figure out which way you want to do what you want to do.
And so my very personal speculation on free will is that it is freedom of choice, and that's what we interpret as free will. And as we make these choices, that destination shifts a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and we experienced it as a huge shift, but
Yeah.
the ultimate, we are finite beings. We can never ever have the ultimate scope of what the heck's going on. Not to mention that we're just a dot in the
Oh yeah.
vastness of creation. And some other beings in some other planet with funny hats are probably saying the same thing right now.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we never will have that capacity. So what we determine to be the best at a given moment is a choice. How we got to that choice is your will. And that was determined by many invisible nudges.
Yeah. So if we have free choice to go through the darkness to reach the light, will we ever reach the light?
I don't know if we have a free choice to go through darkness to reach true light. I think the fact that we are incarnated beings, we are in the darkness and chaos. That wasn't up to us.
Right.
Now it's just, how do we make this ride comfortable and get some light?
Some light, yeah. And going through, I guess to sort of kind of backtrack on my enlightenment, now that we're kind of putting all this out there, the part where I said you reach certain points of enlightenment, that could possibly be certain points where the light reaches you in the darkness.
Yeah. Wow. Super mystic. Very cool. Yes, I agree. That's what it is. That's a very Jewish way of putting it too. I mean, that the whole idea is that there's the rays of light.
Right.
That we take on. So yeah, valid point. Make another valid point.
Is the sky really blue?
No. So that's interesting. I think at the end of the day, if we're gonna be evolving as humans, we have to, one, take a little bit at a time, give ourselves the opportunity to have a chance of that big, vast download. And three, never forget to take others with you, and that it's a community thing.
Yeah, you can't go through it alone because it's a lonely road.
It is. It is. And never forget that we have no idea what we're talking about. We're just talking.
We come up with it as we go.
Thank you, sir. It's always been great.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
See you guys next time, and make sure you guys visit our website at sitaragrotto.org.
Like, share, and repost.